Why most budgeting advice fails. Most people don't fail at budgeting because they're lazy. They fail because the advice sounds logical, but completely ignores how human beings actually behave. Think about it. Every January, millions of people open a budgeting app, create color-coded categories, promise themselves this year will be different. And for about 2 weeks, it works. They stop ordering food. They track every coffee. They feel in control. Then life happens. A stressful day at work. A surprise expense. A weekend out with friends. One small purchase turns into 3. And suddenly the budget feels less like freedom, and more like punishment. Eventually they stop checking the app entirely. Not because they're stupid. Not because they don't care about money. But because most budgeting advice is built for robots, not humans. And once you understand this, your entire view of money changes. Because the biggest problem with budgeting isn't math. It's psychology. Most people think managing money is about numbers. Income. Expenses. Percentages. Saving rates. But money behavior is emotional. That's why someone can know exactly what they should do, and still not do it. It's the same reason people know junk food is unhealthy but still eat it. Or know they should sleep earlier but stay awake scrolling. Humans don't make decisions logically all the time. We make them emotionally, then justify them logically afterward. And budgeting advice completely ignores this. Here's what usually happens. Someone decides they want to get serious about money. So they search online. How to budget. And immediately they see things like, stop buying coffee. Cut all unnecessary spending. Track every dollar. Only spend on needs. At first, this sounds responsible. But there's a hidden problem. Most budgeting systems are built around restriction. And the human brain hates restriction. The moment something feels forbidden, it becomes more attractive. It's why crash diets fail. Why extreme workout plans don't last. Why people binge after trying to be perfect. Budgeting works the same way. If your financial plan makes life feel miserable, your brain will eventually rebel against it. And this creates a cycle most people never notice. First comes motivation. Then restriction. Then frustration. Then overspending. Then guilt. Then restarting the budget again next month. Over and over. It's not a money problem. It's a behavior loop. Imagine someone named Jake. Jake makes decent money. Nothing crazy, but enough to survive comfortably. Every month he tells himself, this month I'm saving money. So he cuts everything. No eating out. No games. No shopping. No fun spending. For the first few days, Jake feels productive. But by week 3, he's mentally exhausted. Because every spending decision feels like a battle. Then one night after a stressful day, he orders expensive takeout. And something interesting happens psychologically. His brain thinks, well, I already messed up. So now the budget feels ruined. Which leads to more spending. More impulse purchases. More emotional spending. More guilt. By the end of the month, Jake spent even more than usual. This is exactly how all-or-nothing thinking destroys financial progress. And most budgeting advice accidentally encourages this mindset. People think financial success comes from being perfectly disciplined. But real wealth usually comes from systems that are sustainable. There's a huge difference. A sustainable system works even when you're tired. Even when you're stressed. Even when motivation disappears. Because motivation is unreliable. Nobody stays motivated forever. The people who build wealth understand something most people miss. Your financial habits matter more than your financial intentions. That's why someone earning a normal salary can quietly build wealth for years. While someone making 6 figures still lives paycheck to paycheck. Because income matters less than behavior over time. And behavior is shaped by environment. Not just willpower. This is where budgeting advice really starts to fail. It treats spending like a math issue instead of a behavioral issue. But spending is heavily emotional. People don't just buy products. They buy relief, status, comfort, convenience, excitement, identity. That's why someone can feel stressed and suddenly want to shop online. Not because they need anything, but because spending temporarily changes their emotional state. Buying something gives the brain a small dopamine hit. It creates anticipation, excitement, novelty. For a few moments, it feels good. The problem is that modern life is designed to trigger this constantly. Apps are engineered to make spending frictionless. You can buy something in 10 seconds without even thinking. No cash. No pause. No physical feeling of losing money. Just tap. And this changes human behavior dramatically. Years ago, spending money felt more real. You physically handed over cash. You saw your wallet getting emptier. Today, spending feels invisible, which makes self-control much harder than older generations experienced. But most budgeting advice still acts like we live in a world without constant temptation. That's like telling someone to diet while surrounding them with cake all day. Environment matters. And wealthy people often understand this better than everyone else. They don't rely purely on discipline. They reduce friction for good decisions and increase friction for bad ones. For example, automatic investing. This is powerful because it removes decision-making. Money gets invested before emotions interfere. The same idea works for saving. If you have to manually save money every month, eventually emotions will win. But if saving happens automatically, your behavior improves without needing motivation. This is the secret most budgeting advice misses. The goal isn't to become a perfectly disciplined person. The goal is to build systems that make good decisions easier. Because humans naturally choose the path of least resistance. Always. And once you understand this, budgeting starts looking completely different. Instead of asking, "How do I stop myself from spending?" you start asking, "How do I make good money behavior automatic?" That question changes everything. For example, many people fail budgets because they try tracking every tiny expense. Now tracking can help awareness. But for many people, it creates mental fatigue. Imagine tracking every snack, every coffee, every subscription, every random purchase. Eventually money starts feeling stressful all the time. And when something feels stressful, the brain avoids it. That's why so many people stop checking their budget apps. Avoidance is a psychological defense mechanism. If checking your finances makes you feel guilt or anxiety, your brain starts treating money like danger. And people avoid dangerous feelings. This is why some people ignore bank accounts, ignore debt, ignore bills. Not because they don't care. Because emotionally, avoidance feels safer in the short term. But there's another hidden issue most people never think about. Traditional budgeting focuses heavily on cutting small expenses, while ignoring massive financial decisions. People obsess over saving $5 on coffee, then finance a car they can barely afford, or move into an apartment that consumes half their income, or carry high-interest debt for years. These large decisions matter far more than tiny daily purchases. But small expenses feel easier to control psychologically. It feels productive. Meanwhile, the bigger financial leaks remain untouched. This is why someone can be extremely careful with small purchases, yet still struggle financially for decades. Because wealth building usually comes from optimizing the big decisions. Housing, transportation, debt, income growth, investing, long-term habits, not skipping one sandwich. And this leads to one of the biggest misconceptions about money. People think budgeting is about deprivation. But effective budgeting is actually about alignment. Alignment simply means your spending matches what you truly value. That's it. A good budget doesn't make life feel smaller. It makes your priorities clearer. For example, someone might genuinely love traveling. Trying to eliminate travel completely may backfire emotionally. But maybe they don't actually care about expensive clothes or constantly upgrading gadgets. So instead of cutting everything equally, they intentionally spend more in areas they value, and less in areas they don't. This feels far more sustainable psychologically. Because humans need enjoyment. A financial plan with zero enjoyment rarely lasts. That's why many wealthy people still spend generously in certain areas. The difference is intentionality. Most broke spending is reactive. Wealthy spending is often deliberate. There's a huge psychological difference between "I accidentally spent money again" and "I consciously chose this because it matters to me." One creates guilt. The other creates control. And control is one of the most important feelings in personal finance. Because people don't just want money. They want what money represents. Freedom. Security. Options. Peace of mind. That's the deeper reason financial stress feels so painful psychologically. Money problems create uncertainty. And the human brain hates uncertainty. That's why even people earning good money can still feel anxious all the time. If spending feels chaotic, life feels unstable. But when people gain clarity and systems around money, something interesting happens. Stress decreases. Not necessarily because they became rich overnight, but because uncertainty decreased. This is why financial confidence matters more than appearing wealthy. A person driving a luxury car with massive debt may actually feel less secure than someone with a smaller lifestyle but strong savings. Because real financial peace comes from margin. Margin means breathing room. The ability to handle emergencies. The ability to say no. The ability to survive setbacks. And ironically, most budgeting advice focuses so much on restriction that it forgets the bigger purpose entirely. Money is supposed to improve your life, not make you miserable. That doesn't mean spending recklessly. It means building a financial system you can actually live with for years. Because wealth is rarely built through extreme short-term discipline. It's usually built through boring consistency. Small habits repeated for a long time. Automatic investing. Controlled lifestyle inflation. Living slightly below your means. Avoiding destructive debt. Increasing income gradually. Making intentional decisions. None of this feels exciting. But that's exactly why it works. The internet loves extreme transformations. Save 90% of your income. Never eat out. Retire in 5 years. But real life usually looks slower. And slower is okay. Because sustainable progress beats temporary perfection every single time. So if budgeting has failed for you before, it doesn't automatically mean you're bad with money. It may simply mean the system was unrealistic for human psychology. Maybe it relied too much on guilt. Too much restriction. Too much perfection. And not enough sustainability. The people who win financially aren't always the smartest. Often they're just the people who built systems they could repeat consistently. That's the real secret. Financial success is less about intensity and more about repeatability. Can you still follow your plan when life gets stressful? When motivation disappears? When emotions take over? Because those moments determine your financial future more than one perfect month ever will. At the end of the day, budgeting advice fails because it tries to control behavior without understanding behavior. Humans are emotional, impulsive, imperfect. And your financial system has to account for that. The goal is not becoming someone who never spends emotionally again. The goal is creating a life where good money decisions happen more naturally over time. That's how real wealth is built. quietly, repeatedly, automatically. And once you understand that, money starts feeling a lot less complicated.